We're doing a series at the moment on the subject of creating space. I think this is a pretty important time to be creating space. Over the last 7 weeks, we've been talking about really how to create space on a micro level within ourselves so that we can support those around us. And anyone that's missed any of them, if you want to listen to previous ones, the little red slip on the chair in front of you shows you how to get the previous episodes. And if you want to be on our mailing list, then the little blue one, you can put that in the plate or wherever. But we've been talking about, how to create space within. And that's creating space within ourselves so that we can create space for those around us to have harmony. And, that fundamentally exists in life, that harmony. We can experience within us and we can share it, that harmony, rather than sharing the chaos that we seem to witness around us. And that chaos that, we do look out into the world and see, I've always said it's a bit like the spume on the top of the wave, the churning that a small boat feels on the ocean, when in reality, underneath, the ocean is vast and cool and calm. It just exists there. The chaos is what the waves create on the top. We witness the chaos, but we have to remember that underneath all that, there is a harmony. And it's our responsibility, even our duty, to identify with that harmony rather than the chaos. Because when we identify with the chaos, we just make it worse. We give the waves something to break against. We offer resistance that in turn creates more resistance and more chaos. We turn the deep ocean into the noisy and splashing that comes from the shallow end of the swimming pool. And I think, that's not what's needed here. I think particularly at the moment, what's needed here is perspective. The perspective that in every era, it seems like all hell is about to break loose. In every generation, it looks like that's going to happen. We always see our own backyard as the most important place in history. When in fact, it's just that we can't really see further than the fence at the end of the yard. Our horizon tends to be quite limited. When you raise yourself up and see what's going on in your backyard, when you get higher, you see that it's nothing compared to the enormous sweep of time and space. We have 14 billion years behind us, and just as many in front of us. We're in a space that is 93 billion light years in diameter. That's the size of the universe. 93 billion light years. And the nature of reality shows us that these dimensions also exist on a micro level. When you go inwards, even into cells, there's a huge vastness of space that's within us, just as they do on the macro level. So to identify with events that are taking place even over the last few days across 2,800 miles approximately, which is effectively our backyard, is to miss the forest because of the trees. What matters is the forest. Or to get back to the watery metaphor that I was using, what matters is the ocean. Our role's, not to get caught up in the whys and the wherefores of who's doing what to whom, save in the responsibility to protect the vulnerable. I do feel that we have the responsibility to protect the vulnerable. Right now, I think what is needed is not more waves, but a space that stills waves. We have to, as a previous subject, we have to have the capacity to contain what comes to us, be that arguments, to contain that, anger, frustration, joy, celebration, triumphalism. All of them are waves that have been whipped up through the frenzy of others expressing the same things, and a storm or a hurricane is whipped up along the way. I thought it'd be interesting to see how hurricanes are created, and storms are created. Just give you a little bit of a background, how storms are created. You first of all get a tropical wave. This is how a hurricane happens. You get a tropical wave, which is a low pressure area that moves through the tropics, picking up moisture. That's what happens first. And then you have evaporation. The warm ocean evaporates water into the atmosphere. And the winds collide and force humid air upwards as well. And then water vapor condenses into the cloud, and rain at higher altitudes happens. The air then rotates as it rises with a specific effect, causing a curve to the right of the northern hemisphere and a left on the southern hemisphere. And the low pressure area of the ocean surface pulls in more warm and moist air, and the winds start to build up, and a tropical depression becomes a tropical storm, and the winds reach 74 miles an hour. The tropical storm becomes a hurricane. So it is a weather event of everything coming together. And I think, in our experience, low feelings are shared. They collide with hot air from the media that drives the feeling higher into anger, and then the anger collides in larger areas, leading to a storm that manifests on the ground. And, it's the same sort of thing. And our role is not to become a part of that storm surge by adding hot air to one side or the other. I'll let this metaphor go in a moment, but you get the idea that it's when things collide that we get the storms. Our role is to have the space and capacity to absorb it when it comes in our direction, and then pour oil on troubled waters. And when I got to that, I thought, where did that come from, pouring oil on troubled waters? And apparently, just for want of nothing, it alludes to an ancient practice of pouring oil on ocean waves to calm their turbulence. And this practice was mentioned in the 8th century and was historically used to improve navigational safety and facilitate sea rescues. So that's literally what people used to do. They used to pour oil. But all of this is happening around us. And we have to remember that we think it's of such importance because it's in our own backyard. And we have to remember that, in the scheme of things, it is a bit of a drop in the ocean, a drop in the history of humanity, a drop in the history of our planet, and definitely a drop in the history of the cosmos. What is not a drop in the cosmos is our own personal connection to the essential life force that's within us. That's not a drop in the cosmos. And it's that which can contain any storm that comes our way. It's our deep connection. I talked to in the topic of this talk was being the eye of the hurricane. And if we can connect at the deepest level, we can connect to a still point. And it's not just us on an individual level, it's really the way forward for anyone caught up in a maelstrom, or feeling that they're caught up in a maelstrom, that they can't affect things. It's the containment that's required rather than argument. From the media, from politicians, from international partners. Now, to phrase it nicely, I know this is just watering in the wind, but the only way we can look at this as grown-ups in the room is to see that actually to connect with that is the approach. And a few weeks ago I used, that prayer of St. Francis, and it really does show us what our role is in a situation like this. St. Francis says, Lord, make me a channel of your peace. And when we think about it, this is the, where we should put ourselves. Make me a channel of your peace. Where there is hatred, let me bring love. Where there is offense, let me bring pardon. Where there is discord, let me bring union. Where there is error, let me bring truth. Where there is doubt, let me bring faith. And where there is despair, let me bring hope. Where there is darkness, let me bring light. And where there is sadness, let me bring joy. O Lord, grant that I may not so much seek to be consoled as to console, to be understood as to understand, to be loved as to love. For it's in giving that one receives, and it's in self-forgetting that one finds. It's in forgiving that one is forgiven, and in dying that one awakens to eternal life. And really, I think that's what's required right now from us individually. And you think, I don't make it, but we do. When I think of all the connections that I make with my children, with people around me, when we sort of came together as a family, and it just makes such a difference to connect with those around you and to give those around you, anyone that's feeling in whatever way, to give them that sense of peace. And we do have the opportunity, particularly us here, because we're here because we, at some level, I imagine all of us knows that we do connect deeply within us. And I think that's what's required from us. I think it's also what's required from commentators, from the media, from international partners. It's the right response to perceived trauma. We have to give space for healing. We all need to see the part that we play in the creation of a storm and to step back from that. And it may be in our short-term interests to be right, but in our long-term interests, what is required is that as many of us as possible are the adults in the room. We are the adults in the room. When you look at a kid's party, when a fight breaks out, you don't take sides and say, you are wrong, You calm the situation down. You show them that fighting isn't the solution to the anger they feel, and there's a better way that will emerge if they put their weapons down and take a deep breath. The other day I quoted from the Tao Te Ching. Again, it's one of my favorite quotes. We think, what do I do? And that lovely quote, do you have the patience to wait till your mud settles and the water is clear? Can you remain unmoving till right action arises by itself? Can you remain unmoving till right action arises by itself? That's the way we get to an answer in all situations. But we never get there if we continue to stir up the mud by thrashing around in the pond. In looking at it, I think our systems of conflict resolution are not fit for purpose. And that applies, I think, to our nation. I think it applies to international situations as well. We continue to use tools that do not create the results that we want to create. We say we want peace, and yet we build weapons and we prepare for war. We say we want a harmonious planet, and yet we conspire often to cheat and lie to each other so that we can get one over on each other. You don't resolve conflict by escalating it. Indeed, it seems that the rule book that everyone operates from is one of escalation, be it in local politics, national politics, or international relations. To escalate in order to de-escalate does not work. Yet it seems, we've seen it not working. We've seen that not working over the last 2,000 years, to escalate in order to de-escalate. And yet it is always our go-to strategy. What would work is, of course, giving space in the face of escalation, if one can work out how to do that. What would work is containing, or here's a good one, I always think, asking the question, how can I help? Or realizing that those we consider our enemies also have families and want a peaceful life as much as we do. And it's our job to help them to get it, whether they're attacking us or not. And that's what Jesus meant when he said, love your enemies. That is exactly what he meant. Don't escalate to de-escalate, but give space, offer help, ask what can be done towards a solution. This is actually the change that needs to happen in all conflict resolution. And therapists know this. Lots of therapists in the room, but they know this. It's just that the rest of us aren't ready to do what works. What we prefer to do is what's going to keep us in power or help us feel that we're winning. And I think we really have to learn this lesson. It's the lesson we need to learn if we're going to survive as the human race, if we're not going to blow ourselves out of the water, if we're not going to drown in the effects of climate change. We have to cooperate with each other in making this world a better place, rather than trying to get rid of everyone we think is stopping us make the world a better place. They're not stopping us. They can actually help us with their intelligence, with their passion, with their muscle. We need to work together. But right now, we need to be, as the cliche always says, we need to be part of the solution rather than the part of the problem. We need to be at that stage of consciousness, the old Einstein quote, we need to be at the stage of consciousness that will solve the problem that's being created by people living at a different stage of consciousness. Einstein said that no problem can be solved by the same level of consciousness that created the problem in the first place. You have to be at a different level of consciousness. And we have to be that. It's going to take a different level of consciousness to sort things out. And that means, at the moment, our role is probably to shut up. I didn't have that written down. I had more written down. I thought, no, I'm in this building, I can't say that. Our role is to shut up, to not join in the cacophony of voices that's creating a particular storm in our particular teacup. And it is a teacup, basically, compared with all of time and space and what's gone before and after and what's happening. And here's a good thing to remember. Whatever happens, God will win. Whatever's going to go on, whatever it is that you think of as God will win. It's worth keeping that in mind. That, if there is an ultimate order, and my employment does depend on there being an ultimate order, so I do have skin in the game here because my employment depends on it. If there is ultimate order, it will order us all in the end, however we try and do the ordering for it, because we think that we know better. There's something about stepping back and allowing things. There's wonderful words again from the Tao Te Ching. Stop thinking and end your problems. I could just stop there, but it goes on. What difference between yes and no? What difference between success and failure? Must you value what others value? Avoid what others avoid? How ridiculous. Other people are excited, as though they're at a parade. I alone don't care. I alone am expressionless, like an infant before it can smile. Other people have what they need. I alone possess nothing. I alone drift about like someone without a home. I'm like an idiot, my mind's so empty. Other people are bright. I alone am dark. Other people are sharper. I alone am dull. Other people have a purpose. I alone don't know. I drift like a wave on the ocean. I blow as aimless as the wind. I am different from ordinary people. I drink from the great mother's breasts. I think it's a fantastic expression. That's the secret of living with eternal life, is to feed ourselves, not from all the stuff, but to feed ourselves from the great mother's breasts. Not to feed on success or failure, not to join in the meaningless fray that erupts around us, not to be consoled by our popularity or our winning, or dismayed by our unpopularity or our failure or what others think of us, When we are living in the eternal nature of life, we become the ocean. We become the instrument of peace. We're not made real by the straw dogs that are set upon each other in the ceremonial battles that are fought to maintain the status quo of the world. Again, I thought that was interesting, the concept of straw dogs. And funny enough, when I looked, I thought, what about straw dogs? It came to me, the idea that straw dogs were, when they had ceremonies in the old days, they had straw dogs that fought each other. And so, the idea is that, great leaders in battles pitch straw dogs against each other to make it look like there's a great battle, but really they're just maintaining the status quo. And in the Tao Te, it's actually mentioned, funny enough, in the Tao Te Ching. Heaven and earth are not humane. They regard all things as straw dogs. I'm on the last page. I know people panic, but it's always worth mentioning that. So you can go, oh. That's what you should do with life. It's, you're all on the last page of life. Anyway, listen. Heaven and earth are not humane. They regard all things as straw dogs. The sage is not humane. He regards all people as straw dogs. So it says straw dogs are used in ceremonies and they're discarded afterwards. Just as ordinary people are used in the ceremony of conflict that we have in the world, be that national arguments, local, international. The Buddha is said to have pointed out once that it's not the external form that love connects with. It's not the external form that love connects with, but the eternal essence. And that eternal essence is what some people call the Buddha nature or the Christ nature. It is that essence, that divine within us. The Buddha says that loving something for its characteristics, be they good or bad, really reflects our own needs. We're attached to good, bad, success. We're attached to all that stuff. We can only feel true love in this case. In reality, the Buddha says we can only feel true love when need, attachment, and desire subside. We let go of all our attitudes and opinions. This deep love, this connection is profound and not affected by the constant waves of affection and disaffection that our world is subject to. Look around, and see any storms that are around you, and then decide to be that eye of the storm, the still point in the turning world. I always love that quote. We used it in our family the other day when our kids left. When our kids left for college, and I've been here, I think about 10 years. We left for college. I stood there, typical, and said that Churchill thing. Now, this is not the end. It's not even the beginning of the end. It is perhaps the end of the beginning. And I think, there's something about that in terms of having this attitude. The beginning is all this raging. And if we can be the end of the beginning, there is something in our own lives. Richard Rohr always talks about two halves of life. The first half of life, you build a container. And the second half of life is you go out and you come from that container and you create life around you, having built your own container. And to some extent, in our world, we are just arriving, I think, at the end of the first half of life, in humanity's terms. We've built the container. And now we're sort of bashing containers against each other and stuff like that. But there is a great realization of the nature of reality being connected to the essence of life. And however much people in politics and stuff like that argue about different things, there is a movement here that realizes there's a connection to the divine, and that connection is interconnected with all people. And that movement is growing. And I'm sure when Marianne Williamson comes in a few weeks' time, she will talk about that, because it is a different way of doing things. It's a different way of approaching life. Perhaps our role in life and this work in what we're doing is for us to see this end of the beginning as a task in making the world a more peaceful place. So, we come together here as a family, community once a week, and we have an opportunity always during our coming together to communicate, to say how you're feeling, what's going on, anything to do with what I've said or anything at all. So if anyone would like to make a contribution, we'll start with Ward. He's coming out. I'll go the other way.
Thank you, Nicholas and Heather. Today it's an anniversary. It's the 10th anniversary of Nicholas coming to the Aspen Chapel. And I was at Tom Hirsch's house last night listening to some records from the 70s, and Mimi and I are about ready to leave. And I'm supposed to say something more. So before I'm going to say what I'm going to say, this is my preface, is that 10 years ago, Greg Anderson became emeritus instead of the chaplain here at the chapel. And Greg at one time told me, he says, every Sunday, the minister gives 3 sermons. He gives the sermon he thinks he gives. He gives a sermon that the congregation hears, and he gives a sermon that is actually told. This week has been tumultuous, but for us at the Houndstein household, it's great because the night before last, 20 minutes before midnight, we became grandparents to a new grandson. And if that grandson had waited another 20 minutes, he would have shared the birthday of our granddaughter.
Oh.
So my final preface to my words is that Nicholas said this is the last page of our life. John Dimmer said today is the first day of the rest of our life. I want to share with you, I was on the search committee when we chose Nicholas to follow Greg. Nobody could replace Greg, but to follow Greg as our next leader. And we were looking for a spiritual leader, and we were looking for a business administrator. And as we went through all these interviews and we went through reviewing all the submissions, we decided that we had to bifurcate that. We were looking for just a spiritual leader. And when we decided that it was going to be a spiritual leader we were looking for, to quote Lao Tzu, the mud settled and the right action appeared from itself.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you what won me over is that I was asked to do the interviews and ask about the spiritual part. And I asked, submissions had, I think, 2 or 3 sermons of past sermons that the applicants had submitted. And one of the sermons that Nicholas gave brought a question about what is the second coming? But he talked about the second coming. I said, Nicholas, what does the second coming mean to you? And I'll paraphrase this, but this is what won me over. He says, when you realize that we are one, separation is an illusion. The first Sunday that Nicholas was here, he asked me to read from the Tao Te Ching. And it's the first chapter. And if you look at the translations of the Tao Te Ching, every single translation has a little bit different nuance, but as I read chapter 1, for me it's the temporal and the spiritual. And just to read the first 4 lines. The way that can be walked is not the eternal way. The name that can be named is not the eternal name. That's the spiritual. And then the nameless is the beginning of, or the named is the beginning of heaven and earth, and the named is the mother of all things. So the nameless is spiritual, and the temporal is the named. Churchill, serendipity, you quoted the Tao Te Ching. I had the Tao Te Ching. I'm quoting Churchill here. He says, British and Americans are 2 people separated by a common language. Little did I know that a bonnet is really a hood. or a boot is really a trunk. That a waistcoat is a vest. And for us, waistcoat, but to the Brits, waistcoat. And if you want to stay, be at the right place at the right time, you have to have a sessional to do it.
Have a what?
schedule. How do you pronounce schedule?
A schedule. A schedule, yes. What you call a schedule is actually a schedule. And what you call a calendar is, in fact, a diary. So.
And over the last 10 years, we've discovered a lot of differences.
Yes.
But Nicholas isn't our driver. I mean, you can't trust somebody to drive if they don't know what side of the road to drive on. But he is a navigator. And I'd say that every week Nicholas navigates us to a deeper understanding of our consciousness, a deeper understanding of our lives. I listen to your message every Sunday, and it put your words in the context of my life situation. So it's like the sermon, everybody hears something different from a sermon. To quote another Brit, the Led Zeppelin had good times, bad times, and in 10 years we've had a lot of good times, we've had some bad times, and bad times, a pandemic. We made it through a pandemic. Nicholas was tasked with trying to heal some of our physical and tighten the belt on our physical restraints because of the pandemic. And Nicholas became a lightning rod for frustrations caused by the pandemic and the pandemic makes us to practice forgiveness that we've taught and tried to understand and incorporate into our being. And I just want to say thank you to Nicholas and Heather for a decade of good times and a deeper understanding.
Thank you. Thank you so much. So appreciate it.
Thank you.
These are lovely words. So appreciate that. Yeah.
Thanks, Ward.
Great. Do you want to say anything, Donnie, at all?
Just grateful. Thank you, Ward, for that. So meaningful. 10 years, I mean, that's such a long time. And, what an amazing 10 years it's been for us to be here. And every week is so meaningful, sharing our lives with you lot. And so just thank you. Yeah.
I'll probably quit while I'm ahead, but if there's anybody that does feel there's a burning thing to say, then feel free. But yes, fantastic. How nice to have you with us, Maria. That's great.
Just quick, I had never talked in a microphone, so anyway, I just got into town. My name's Maria. I come in and out to the chapel when I'm here and when I lived here. It's been a really spiritual place for me. I'm probably going to cry, sorry. So I'm here because my niece Sienna came home yesterday.
Your niece Sienna came home yesterday. We've been
Yes,
praying for
I
her.
said I wasn't going to cry, but of course I'm going to cry. So she was in a car accident in May 25th, and you've all been praying for her.
Yeah, we have.
She's walking and talking and eating. She's at church today at St. Mary's, and I just wanted to let you all know. Thank you.
Well, Maria, thank you so much for coming. It's just worth a round of applause. So appreciate you.
My brother David Groffa and Emily Groffa and Rocco, her brother, are so grateful also. Thank you so much.
Thank you. We appreciate you saying that. Thank you.